So you might have noticed that I took the easy route and outsourced the title of my talk to your name tags. So let's first complete this slide before we go on. Instead of giving me your own answers, maybe take a look to the name tag of the person to your right and to your left, and let's shout some of those out. Openness. Sweet peas? Sweet peas. One more. Awesome. So, I don't think there is one word that's going to capture it. You could try the rest of the morning to pick one of these words. And at the same time, there is no wrong answer, right? I think it's one of those moments, one of those feelings, one of those things that is actually not hard to spot, right? It's easy to know when we feel connected with people that we are working with, that people we are conversing with. And for me, as a design researcher, those are the moments, looking at it through the lens of my work, where I know this project is going to work, it's going to succeed. Because you know you've opened up a space and everybody is actually now able to bring their best into the work we're going to do together. And that's such an obvious feeling that we all intuitively know what it is. But through my experience of jumping into a lot of different projects, and for me it usually is fast-paced, I'm going from learning about financial services in the Philippines, to learning about agriculture in Ethiopia, to reproductive health services in Zambia. There's no way I could be an expert in any of these things. So my best way of finding quick answers along with our team is to open up those conversations and get those real answers and insights from everyone around the project, and especially people who are going to be users of it and benefit from it. So going through this process of repeatedly going from knowing nothing to having some insights to finding that moment where everybody feels this is on the right path. What has been more interesting to me is to find all those things before that moment of connection happens. It's all those misunderstandings, all those contradictions, all those frictions. And to me, those all feel kind of like this. You're a little stuck in the mud, you know, you're immersing yourself in the field, literally. And you're just waiting, right? Like you're waiting for that moment for those insights to arrive. But what I've also learned is that it's very likely that the insight doesn't exist. There is no eureka moment. It's actually a collection of hundreds of these little I see moments that you collect for months, right? You have tons of conversations. And those are what give shape to that bigger idea that people connect with. So I'll give an example. This is a photo from an area close to Bukavu. And Bukavu is on the border of Rwanda and Congo. So we were there to work on a project with the American Refugee Committee, with IDEO.org. And the idea is that we are there and our mission is to find the right structure for a startup that is going to bring essential services, that is clean water and clinic, to these villages that don't have any of these services. And our challenge, basically, our brief, is to use a startup model to offer these services, as opposed to the typical NGO model of having a budget, knowing what we're going to deliver, do that for a given period of time, and then naturally that budget is over, our project is done, right? There's all kinds of good reasons for that approach. But in a place like this, where there's a permanent community that lives there, if you introduce a service that is subsidized like that, we are going to really disrupt local economy, right? And this is what has happened here. This area had clinics, then aid programs came, and there are a lot of aid programs there, all with the best of intentions. But by offering a free clinic service for 2 years in a row, they have bankrupted all the other clinics that existed. And then once the program is over, now there are no clinics left. So we are there to look at that same, initial budget and treat that as a seed fund for this startup that they're going to put up. So naturally, we are doing extensive research in the community, trying to understand the dynamics, trying to understand the history of the similar services there. And quickly we realized that the mamas, because everybody's mamas and papas, the mamas of the village are our best allies. They are the hardworking ones, they're running the family. And through going to the villages and doing rounds of research and interviews, we are collecting more and more information, a lot of those small moments. So I'll give you an example of one of these moments of understanding. What we are trying to understand as a part of this research is how to actually build this thing. Where should the clinic be? Where should the community water point be? Are they going to be close together? Who is going to manage them? All these nitty-gritty questions, right? And we actually want to get all of these answers from the community that's going to use it. So what we do is, after a full trip for the research, we go back with a couple of ideas in terms of how this could be done. And the way we want to check this is by running this workshop, where we invited some of the most vocal ladies from these 3 villages, and running a 2-day workshop where we propose 2 basic structures and getting them to come up with all the answers. So going back to that question of where should these services be physically located, we kept saying that, well, these services should probably be very close to each other. It's easier to build, easier to maintain, and easier to manage. And the answer we kept getting was, no. It's very obvious that a water point for the community shouldn't be close to the clinic. And we just couldn't crack it. We couldn't understand why. After days of research, going back again from San Francisco to Bukavu, we run this workshop. And we do, as a big part of it, we do a half day of role play, where we assume different roles. And with all these ladies from the different villages, I am the nurse, you're the merchant at the agriculture support point, somebody is selling the water, and we go through all the scenarios. We are teasing out how corruption could happen, whose cousins shouldn't be allowed to be appointed to what position, and so on and so forth. So all of this actually eventually came together in a 125-page document of how to start and run this startup. And obviously when you do role play, everybody is super engaged, everybody's having lots of fun. And doing the bartering, doing kind of the haggling. And through all this, and I'm not sure when through all this, we realized that when we're asking people if the water point and the clinic should be next to each other, they say no, because water point means playground. And why is that? Because what happens is, it's the children who always typically go to get the water. They have the most idle time. So if you're used to meeting all of your playmates at the water point, that's the playground. And playgrounds are loud places. Therefore, they shouldn't be built next to clinics. Okay. So that's an example of 100 of these little things, right? From this physical kind of relation of things, to the naming, to the colors, to pricing strategy, membership, you name it. I could speak a whole day just about those. So here we are doing, together we are picking what brand direction we should go in. And well, this is the sweet part where, for me as a consultant, I owe all of this to the partners that are on the ground, to people at ARC who actually make this happen after a year and a half of hard work. That's the opening of the clinic, and this is our very own posed shot. That's the secretary and that's the doctor. So things are going good. So let me switch to another project. Not too long after that project, I am in the Philippines with a great group of co-workers. And this time we are trying to figure out how to offer financial services to families who've been affected by Typhoon Haiyan. So we are there exactly 6 months after the typhoon. And we are working with Mercy Corps, the relief organization, and a local bank called Banco. And Banco is a really interesting bank because they are actually mandated to only onboard people who are unbanked currently. So they're specifically going out after rural clients, and they are a mobile bank because there's no way you could actually reach all these people by opening chapters or locations. So starting conversations around financial habits, financial choices, coping with disaster, losing all of your home, is obviously not an easy feat under any circumstance. Even harder when we are there as observers, and we are outsiders, and we are learning about the culture at the same time as having these conversations. So as we're having these beautiful scenic drives through the Philippines, going up and down from Tacloban to the different villages that we are doing interviews in, we start chatting with our guides, and one of the things that comes up, our translator Ismail starts telling us about this TV show called Eat Bulaga, which means Eat Surprise. So it's a daytime contest TV show where people call in and do all kinds of different games, and it's been actually the longest standing TV show in the Philippines, super popular. We're like, okay, that's a good conversation starter, people know that. Why don't we design a game called Lone Bulaga, and that's how we're going to get people to start talking to us about financial habits and how they would go about getting a loan. So we designed this board game, and when I say we designed this, it's always at probably around 6 p.m. we were like, that's what we're going to do tomorrow, and that's what we're doing until midnight. So the next day we have this thing, which has 3 dice in the center, and each dice is going to give you one condition of the loan. So who am I going to get it from? My uncle, the bank, the trustee of the village. How much is it? $100, $2,000. And what are the terms of my loan? I'm going to pay it back in 6 months, I'm going to pay it back in 2 years. And we get people to throw this dice and get a loan combination and react to it. And obviously we are not hoping to get a loan defined there because we are just playing, right? But the conversations we are getting are that much better, right? We are starting from a fun place, and quickly people actually take the dice and form it into what they actually would want. So we have asked that question in a fun way, and now already we are in the conversation, right? And the fun thing is actually at the top, you see we have a penalty scale. So I have these penalty cards if you don't pay your loan back. And some of them are inspired by the loan sharks, which take away your fan in the hot season or take away your TV. So you get bored and probably pay up. And all the way to going to jail. And the one that we had, that we made up, was singing for the whole village. And consistently, that was even worse than going to jail. So, some scientific nugget there. But when we get this conversation started, at some point it gets so much momentum that this is a photo that my friend Marie brought back that was in the team. So she had been doing this game in the bazaar, in the fruit bazaar. And the conversation got so heated that the board game wasn't enough anymore. So they flipped it over and started actually negotiating terms of this loan with the whole kind of market right there. And this actually was the starting point for the actual loan that we started testing and going forward with. Another big learning, I think, from this project was to always keep an eye out for the contradictions. And actually, those are the threads that we pull to get closer and closer to those moments of understanding. So the biggest contradiction in all of this project for us was that we are in a disaster-prone area, but no one has any interest in buying life insurance. So we cracked that nut. That was like the overall project. But that will take a long time to explain how we did that. But some of those smaller things that led to how we solved this problem is, so here we are set up outside of a station where people are getting these support funds from Mercy Corps to go and put it back into repairing their home, getting their business back on its feet. And what we are trying to learn is, do people trust a mobile system to manage this money as it comes in and make financial decisions around it? So we've made this giant kind of board out of Post-its, and it's a giant phone, basically. And on this giant phone, we have conversations with people. So one of the conversations we have is with this senior lady, and she keeps saying, I don't really use my phone. It's very old. It's kind of a really basic feature phone. It doesn't have memory, so I can't keep the texts. But as we're having conversations with her, she keeps giving us really exact answers about what the bank had told her, when her money is going to be available, and all that. And I realized she's actually peeking under the table. There is a booklet she has. I'm like, where are you getting all these answers? So it turns out she has actually written all the texts she gets from the bank in this notebook. So she's probably actually the most engaged person with her phone and with the bank through that. So that was a good confirmation for us that if there is value, and there is value, people will find a way, right? You get your cousin's phone. It's things that we know, right? But to get that sense and be able to tell ourselves, tell the bank, tell Mercy Corps, here's evidence, let's go forward, that's what that moment does for us. And then, the younger people who are expected to use the phone are leaps and bounds ahead of what we thought they would be comfortable with. So we take that prototype of the Post-its on a giant board to this little phone that people hold, and without any instructions from us, they go through screens of getting their loan, right? From the first prompt, they answer, and then we kind of pull the right cards, but we are not helping them at all. They go through it. That goes pretty well. A lot of people get the loan. And what we are feeling at this point is, okay, we are getting closer and closer to this loan that we have defined, and everything is going really good. People are super comfortable with getting it through the phone. People are totally fine with the terms. And the only thing we can imagine is that it's probably because it feels like too much of a test and a prototype that people are kind of willing to humor us and go along with it. So this is where having these unlikely partners in the room and in the village with us pays off. So we have VP of Marketing of the bank with us. We have the coordinator of volunteers from Mercy Corps with us. And this is another one of those 6 p.m. what are we going to do tomorrow moments. And the two of them are like, well, why don't we actually give loans? And we're like, what do you mean? Like, no, literally we give loans and then we get them to pay back. So right on the spot, she decides that she can put some money towards these loans. And the volunteer coordinator pulls some volunteers, and we spend the night figuring out how to give people real loans, open accounts for them, make sure all the contract forms and everything is legally correct, and make it as frictionless as possible. And there we are. The next day, we are set up in the market. There is a fruit stand here, we are selling loans here, and there's a fish stand right there. And that is one of the things we've also learned, right? Through all these conversations, we know that the personal trust and the ways that people are used to always trumps this trust that we assume they would have in an institution of a bank, right? Actually, a glass door is the last thing a lot of people want to walk through because they've probably been ripped off by similar things. So obviously, a moment like this would have been impossible if we hadn't pushed for those unlikely conversations, for those people who typically wouldn't be in those places to be with us, right? And a lot of the time, our work is just to create that environment and just sit back, right? It's closing those distances and having the VP of marketing of the bank stand there, and she's actually there in the back. She's selling loans in the village. And I think that changes everybody's perspective to some level. This is one of the most important lessons, and it's going to make sense in about 5 minutes. But wrap it in a potato sack. Just remember that. It's very important. So I'm going to switch to another project. So we're in Ethiopia. We are working with the Ministry of Agriculture to come up with a design for a machine that's going to plant teff. So what you're looking at is this seed called teff, which you've all probably had in injera bread in the Ethiopian restaurants. But the tiny seeds, they are the seeds. It's actually one of the smallest seeds that humans grow. It's really hard to handle mechanically. And that's why there is no machine that plants teff right now. It's all done manually. And that brings the yield for the whole country down, and Ethiopia is always prone to drought. So they need to quickly fix this problem. And we are tasked with designing a machine that brings some of these best practices of planting and makes it available to the farmers. Because we start our project by talking to TEF scientists. I kid you not, we talked to TEF PhD, and nothing to be surprised at in Ethiopia. It's a real love affair with TEF, and they are telling us all these kind of specific planting conditions that works great in the lab, in a kind of controlled environment. But our job is to bridge that method that can increase yield by twice as much to what a farmer can afford to do, right? Because a farmer can't afford to put the seeds one by one in a container this big and grow it, right? What they use is they just use this broadcasting method. So they just throw the seed, and that's what a lot of traditional planting is. So I just need to highlight these two dudes. That's Martin, who is a super talented industrial designer, and that's Robbie, who is an engineer who was actually working in NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab before coming to IDEO.org to work with us. And they are they're the technical force behind this project. I'm doing the research side. And it's especially important because the potato sack inside was from the trip they were on after the trip we did together. So we are immersing ourselves in the mud to understand how this thing works. If we design a machine, how is it going to actually be able to plant? And the biggest problem we are having, and the thing that is confirmed by all the farmers that we talk to, is that this is the stickiest mud you will ever see. So we are at a loss. We have brought so many different insights together. We know a lot of things about how this machine should work. We have looked at previous designs. Most interestingly, we have talked to this guy, Fituma, who is a farmer hacker. And so he lives in this tiny village in a house next to his mom's house that he built. So we are sitting in his handiwork, and it's beautiful, and it's been there for like 17 years. That's the ceiling. And Fituma is amazing because he goes to the seminars by the Ministry of Agriculture, comes back to his village, and hacks together these tools based on these practices they're giving. Except he actually tweaks them to be doable for him as one farmer. And he was joking when he was showing us this. He's like, these are the early prototypes that are going to end up in the Fituma Museum. So what he had was a tube where you would pour the seeds in and make holes, and then as you rotate it, it just spouts seeds out. So you can plant it in a line. And that's his workshop, literally. He has that chisel. That is not a real chisel, it's a piston of an engine. And that other piece of wood is the hammer. And he has built all the tools using these tools. Genius man. And this is his invention. It's a contact-free planting machine because it has no wheels. He is of the opinion that it's so sticky that it's better that we don't even touch the soil. Like, all right, we take that into account. So we have the extreme PhD opinion of it has to go all the way. This farmer is telling us there's no way, no one can afford that. And now we get to work, right? We are trying all these like in-between methods, all ways of rolling this on the mud. Martin, being Austrian, has to try skis. Didn't work. But it would have worked on other soils, right? This is the thing about this soil. The clay content is really high, so you can't even drag something on it. So we are at a loss, right? We have figured out all these details about this machine. How much seed should it dispense? Where should the fertilizer go? How do we make it visual so the farmer knows how much seeds they are using on the farm? But we can't figure out this wheel. And in the second trip, the guys are back. They are a couple of days away from a big prototyping day where they're going to take the prototype to a test field and do one round of planting and see where that will end up. And as they're hacking these things together in the shop, one of the guys that's helping them in the shop hacking this bicycle wheel is like, you should just wrap it in potato sack. And we're like, what? It's like potato sack. Everybody knows if you wrap a wheel in potato sack, the mud doesn't stick. And it's like a moment of like, all right, we'll just try it. I mean, what's to lose? We'll just try that. They try it and it works. And then turns out that's actually a customary practice. A lot of people know this. So that is one of those moments for us, like, okay, we are stuck. We are literally this close to the solution, and the solution is in people's heads around us. So despite all the things that we have learned, maybe we haven't opened up that space that much more to get that insight as well, right? But luckily it happened, right? So this is now a recent photo from the IDEO Chicago shop. And you see those little metal hooks? They are the mechanism that is designed to wrap it in a potato sack. And all these insights stayed with the project, but all of them came from people outside of us. So super exciting. This is the next generation we're seeing in their shop. The mechanism for dispensing seed and how much it should be. And that's very gratifying to see, right? Seeing that result. So to maybe leave it on just one remark, I think what I've learned going through this process of going from the unknown to the known, from the plethora of things that could be true to what actually is an insight, what I've learned is this is the work. Like being in the mud and feeling stuck, that is my work. And when it gets to that moment of connection to the insight, that's everybody else doing it. So my job is to actually bring people together in a place where that can happen. So I think I've learned to enjoy that part. Thank you.